Oh, yes. Yes. Kim didn't tell me we used I don't know. I'm not sure. I don't think so for the. Five members present, not including one there. And the discussion, the procedure bylaw says that 15 minutes. Good morning, I have so we'll die. Yeah, sure. I keep thinking this is, yeah, so it's only 5 people, we're fine, but what Chip recommended was if we only have 5 people make one that you and not discuss it, that you don't have more, so even if. No, I understand that. So students recommended we do it to everybody together. Exactly. So the sheets are only like 50. But we can pull together. Yeah, sure. Exactly. There is one more. Well, there are 2 of us here. That's right. Forum. Protocol policies. Oh. We have forum. Wonderful. That's even better. Okay. All right.
Can anybody hear me? Hi. Yeah.
Thank you very much for zooming in.
Sorry, repeat.
Thank you very much for zooming in. We really appreciate it because we're a little anxious about achieving quorum.
No problem.
And also your input. Chris and I and Marnie found your input to the working group very, very, very helpful. So it's
Good.
great to have you here for firsthand for the discussion.
Good, thank you.
And just so you're aware, we're going to move that part of the agenda to the end of section 4, the business, because Bo will be here and then he will recuse himself for that part of the discussion.
Okay,
So just so you know, I'll make that announcement at the beginning of the meeting, but just so you know.
Good.
I hope you're someplace nice where there's good food and maybe good
Well,
wine. I don't know.
it's Montreal, so it doesn't get much better in that regard.
Oh, makes me sad.
Oh, I'm sorry to tell you that.
Wonderful. I've been thinking about Montreal lately. I don't know why.
Oh, it's
Yeah,
we always enjoy our time here.
yeah.
And the short tour around the eastern townships was interesting as well. My first time there.
Oh, that's even sadder.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I won't say anymore.
Did you go to the Hobie Inn?
No, we went to a small place in what was it, Commonsville.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, the townships are just gorgeous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Funny.
Yeah. I got to go to Gananoque today. Oh.
Can I be seen? I don't think so.
No, I don't know if you we would really like to see you, especially if you've got
No, it's all right. I'm on a phone, so it's.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, that you'll get a better signal if you're not seen, actually. We were just hoping for a Montreal panorama in the background.
So I get that.
Well, I must say, though, today is the first day I haven't been up at the lake in about 5 days, and it has been spectacular up there. So,
Oh, we've got good weather as well, so that certainly makes anywhere easier to bear, doesn't it?
oh yeah. But we just, yeah, it's been gorgeous. And of course, the lake is practically deserted. So,
Yes, and low.
yeah, they've taken out another log, so it's getting lower and lower as usual.
I dinged a prop on my boat the other day.
Oh no.
So you could put that log back in anytime.
Yeah. Doesn't take much, does it?
No, it doesn't.
Oh, I asked Marnie about the protocol.
Wait, we don't need that. I'm sorry, we don't need.
Yeah, it hasn't been, yeah. Yeah.
All you need is to complete the complete the sign it through the government website. Did it send you that?
No. I asked Marnie if there was going to be any COVID protocol for the meeting, and she consulted, I'm not sure who, but said that no, because it hadn't been actually adopted in the procedural bylaw. So,
Oh, okay, perfect.
yeah, and probably our next meeting, we will all have our QR codes and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, so we don't need to worry about it. That's one of the questions that I had in my mind. So this has been the week of questions, Ray.
QR codes quite popular here.
Yeah, well, you know, I
You
shouldn't editorialize, but I can't for the life of me figure out why Ontario just didn't pick up the phone and say to Quebec, say, you've got an app for that. Can we
Yeah.
maybe?
Exactly.
Really?
Except it's only in French.
Oh, that's okay. Makes it sort of more,
Challenging.
yeah. Expect a number of other members are going to come in by Zoom. Terry said, Terry Childs is there. Hello, Terry Childs.
Hello,
How are you?
I'm good.
Are you in your office or on the road?
I am, but I can't put the video on because the host has stopped it.
Oh,
Yeah, that's the same thing here.
Marnie?
Otherwise, I don't know how we're going to vote.
That could be the way it works with this.
Yeah, isn't that good? Yeah, it is. Because I guess there's a, okay. And there's an updated, Kim, Madam Mayor?
I'm so sorry.
No, it's, well,
Oh, wait, he wants to turn his video on, but he said that I don't know.
Stop staring at me, Kim.
I know. Giving you the stink eye. No, that doesn't do it either. Right? You want me to set up a meeting?
Hi, Terry, it's Ray.
Hey, Ray, how are you?
Good, thank you.
Hope you're wearing your mask.
No, I'm not.
Yeah, well, that's unfortunate. Okay.
Amanda, do you want me to open it? You maybe both? I'm trying to figure it out. You just- Yes,
I know. I thought we were coming up on 3, not 4, so I'm just like lollygagging at my desk. And then I go, it's 2 seconds to 4, not 3.
Okay. Yeah, we could definitely do that.
I think it might be a good idea. So I spoke to our colleague Vicky and she indicated she would be she would be zooming into the meeting. So we have no.
I did.
Okay, so I'm not joining the computer audio because we're going to start.
Wait a-
I can't start my video with the host.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to figure out, but I don't see we need a co-host. I think it's maybe it's just how we can just set it up. I'm gonna stick you the host then. So it says I make you co-host. Oh, I can't make you the host.
Do we have, how many minutes do we have before we're going to start?
Well, we don't have quorum yet, so it could be any time. Marnie and Amanda are just trying to sort out a bit of a technology issue. So
Okay, I'm going to take 2 minutes to go up to my room to get a charger. So I'm afraid I'm going to run out here during the show.
okay, that's fine.
I'm still here.
Okay, good.
What's you just doing here?
Oh, this is, you've got meeting right now.
Oh, there's Bo. Hello, Bo. Bo comes on, we will have.
Can you go into the actual Zoom settings, like the meeting, is that what it was?
I think, given the fact we're still working out the technology, we won't start the clock counting on our 15 minutes until we get the technology sorted out. So I see you on the line, Bo. Are you there?
Yep, I'm here.
Wonderful, thank you. We're just trying to sort out visuals and other things, so.
It should work now if anybody wants to try and turn the video on.
Terry,
Hey.
we can see you.
And Ray will be back momentarily. He's just gone to get a charger from his hotel room. So then we will have 1, 2, 3.
Chris, and then maybe
We still will not have quorum.
We'll have a quorum, we just won't have quorum for that purpose. Yeah, so if we don't have another member join, we're gonna have to defer that particular item.
Right, I called Vicky and she said that she was going to be attending. I do not have her phone number in my system. I have it on my file at home.
put that in. What, part of the conversation around that, we'll get to when we get to that.
Yeah.
budget, is just the position.
Marty, do you have Vicky's telephone number?
I'm just looking to see if I can find it.
Do you? Good. We should call her because she told me she was going to.
Just gonna step in for a quick
Yeah.
second.
Okay, so. Okay, so we are, I think, able to begin the meeting now because we do have quorum. So I will call the meeting to order as of 4:08. And that gives us an extra 15 minutes starting the clock at 4:08 in case we do not get an immediate response from our colleague Vicky. Does anyone have a declaration of interest for this meeting? And any item on its
Yeah,
agenda?
I do.
Thank
Yeah, I
you.
do. I have on the, can you hear me?
Yep, perfectly.
Yeah, it's Bo. I do on the voting for the,
Thank you, Bo.
or discussion on the corridors.
Thank you, Bo. And just to let everyone know, because Bo has already indicated that he was going to recuse himself for that part of the discussion, I've moved the item around membership renewal and the agreement to the last item under business number 4. So we will start with broadband and then move forward to that. So adoption of the July 21, 2021 EDC meeting minutes. Are there any questions or corrections to the minutes? Hearing none, may I have a motion to adopt the minutes of the July 2021 EDC meeting? Chris moves, Terry Childs seconds. Any discussion of the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, carried unanimously. Ray, are you back?
I'm back, sorry.
Thank you. That's great. So that is carried unanimously. Okay, so let's move to the business portion of the meeting. And then the first item on our agenda is the Broadband Initiative. At our last meeting, we were given the unfortunate news about the collapse of the long underway efforts on the part of the township to engage with both the provincial and the federal government to get funding for a broadband initiative. This is obviously a key element of the economic future of the township. And so I think there would be consensus among members of the EDC, especially since we're going to have a discussion of the economic development budget at this meeting, to get any possible update that might be available. So I will perhaps ask you, Madam Mayor, to give us an update.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll try to be brief about this. To put it in a succinct manner, the the application was filed for phase one, and the deadline was in 2020, the fall of 2020. I think the first phase that we applied, it was in 2020. There was a phase two that was to be filed in April. Our staff here were told that we could file in the fall for phase two because we were still in the process of issuing the tender to have the business plan, business partner to do that. It was intimated that we missed a deadline, and that's why our broadband initiative was not accepted. We have clear direction and acknowledgement from Infrastructure Ontario that they moved the deadline without notifying us, which is a bigger problem.
Yes.
So we had a meeting with Infrastructure Ontario 2 weeks ago. And they admitted that when they looked back over their correspondence that we were left out of said correspondence. The initiative, essentially though, based on our timelines, it would have been difficult for us to meet it. It's not to say that we couldn't have pushed things forward a bit more hastily. They changed that from the fall intake to July 30th because of the changes to the Universal Broadband Fund at the federal level as they dumped all the money from that particular fund into the provinces respectively to administer, which then triggered this reverse auction. We still remain confused and uncertain as to how that rolls out within our own municipality. We have put pressure on both our members' office and Infrastructure Ontario to provide clarity. We're waiting for further confirmation of said details, mainly because the reverse auction, if you will, and I'll be honest, to the province credit, they can't get confirmation from the federal government as to the projects that have already been funded, so they don't double fund the ones that have already been funded. It's a big bit, it's a huge boondoggle, I'll be quite honest. And I'm not trying to pass the buck. I fully believed that the plan that we had in place that we were about to award a tender to do was to provide consistent connectivity throughout the whole of the municipality, not partial. One of the questions we had for Infrastructure Ontario was, based on your reverse auction, and the province, the premiers made the promise that it's supposed to be 85-15 for connectivity, wired versus wireless. I challenged both Minister Surma and the infrastructure staff that they should work on wireless for about a week, and then we'll have a further discussion after that. None of them have any clue what that means. We don't live in the most remote part of the province. We do have topography and geography challenges due to water and rock. But the proposal that we had received in the tenders, the one that would likely have been chosen, had provided a very comprehensive and inclusive plan. And that's what I tried to get forward with Minister Surma, that their plan would likely be, I was being a bit cheeky with her, to be honest. I'm like, you say 85-15 for the province, but we all know that 85% of the province doesn't live in the rural area. So does that actually mean 50-50 for our township? And so, of course, nobody's willing to commit to anything. Our main concern with the reverse auction is that they haven't been clear with anybody as to the sections, because everything's been sectioned in the province to include both highly densified parts as well as rural parts. So you got to take the good with the bad, if you will. But nobody's saying where those are and what happens if the bids come in too high. So anyways, we're still trying to get clarity. I haven't given up hope that maybe our plan might still be on the table, because I think that the province is going to find that the solutions they're going to receive in the reverse auction may not fit the needs of all the population in our municipality as well as others. So I'm continuing to pressure the minister, both our member and his office and his EA, as well as Infrastructure Ontario. So I'm not willing to give up the fight at this point. So I'll continue to provide updates, but the hope is that either way that there will be better connectivity to more of the population within the municipality, one way or the other.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll open the floor to questions or comments from members of the committee.
I have a
Ray,
question.
Ray.
How much has the township spent developing our proposal to this date approximately?
I'll leave that to Marnie. She's sort of been the quarterback. She would be able to speak to the funds spent to date.
Thank you. So through council, we had approved budget for $50,000 for the initial design and an additional $25,000 for the broadband business plan. I can tell you that in terms of the business plan, we only completed a portion of that contract. So I would say probably out of the 25, we spent, I'm trying to do math in my head, but about $15,000 because we didn't complete it as we were waiting to have our project partner on board to finish the financials, although what was done formed part of the procurement process for a partner. So we probably spent around $55,000 to date.
Terry,
Just to clarify, there's been no assistance from Steve Clark or his office?
Sorry, Madam Chair, through you.
Yeah.
No, Minister Clark has been helpful putting me in contact with Minister Surma, the Minister of Infrastructure. The difficulty has been that the infrastructure ministry can't get clarification from the federal government as to the awarded tenders prior to the writ being dropped. There's no clear direction coming from the feds. So they're hesitant to award more projects in the province right now until they confirm what projects the feds have already funded, because there's been some conjecture about a project being, for example, being awarded in the northern part of this municipality up near Sealy's Bay, that there might be funding that's already come through for Bell to put in a fiber optic cable there, but nobody's willing to confirm that at this point. It's absolutely bizarre.
But
So as far as the infrastructure ministry, Minister Clark is still, his EA is still pressuring Infrastructure Ontario to give further details. I know that we're not the only municipality putting this pressure on Infrastructure Ontario, and we are not going to let up our foot on the gas.
follow-up questions from anyone or other questions?
Yeah.
Yes,
So
Terry.
all Steve has done or his EA has done is given you contact information that all of us could get anyway?
His EA has also been trying to get information at the same time from different sources within the ministry. Right now, they're still, because they're hesitant to give out any information because they don't have complete information from the federal side. So right now, it's almost like it's a holding pattern. And because of the reverse auction, because the tender that we were about to award was not necessarily, in order to get the funds from the province in the reverse auction, you have to be an internet service provider. So if you were only a company that put in the infrastructure, you wouldn't qualify for the reverse auction. So anyways, we're trying to get further clarification, and right now it's unclear. The details coming forward, both to Steve Clark's office and to us, is incomplete.
Welcome to the meeting, Vicki. We're currently discussing the Broadband Initiative.
Thank you. Sorry, I got tied up with work but sorry for being late.
Any other questions or follow-up to the mayor? I have a question.
Sure.
You mentioned that there may be other municipalities that are in the same boat. Has there been any effort through AMO or any other affinity organization to find out who else is in the same boat and to try and maybe leverage a little bit of collective action?
So thank you, Madam Chair, and through you. I believe that AMO, this was one of the main things that happened at AMO in August because of the quick change or the change of gears that happened in July, because this change to the reverse auction happened July 17th, 18th in there, which was right around the time that we were trying to finalize our tender. and nobody really knew what was going on. And then therein lies the change to the submission date to July 30th for the ICON funding. Keep in mind, the ICON funding was only to fund 25% of an overall project. So you would still require, as the motion that was in front of council showed, that we would be, or was to be in front of council, that we would require input from both ICON and the UBF, but the UBF disintegrated and was dumped into the larger pot, if you will. So it, at the end of the day, there are other municipalities in this. We haven't been able to band together yet, but AMO is working on it right now because of the lack of clarity from this reverse auction. Because the head of Roma is the mayor from Westport, she's also putting pressure at Roma at the same level. So we're trying to work together to put pressure in all sides, but with lack of clarity on all levels of the government when it comes to this, because everybody's saying there's all this money for broadband, but nobody seems to know how it's supposed to be administered. And that's the difficulty right now, because as a municipality who is willing to take the future into our own hands and not wait on other people to provide the solution. And I think that was what was most disappointing. As a municipality, we had a comprehensive plan that would be fair for all residents, or a greater portion of the population than what the province is offering. So, and that's what I kept reiterating to the minister on our call, as well as her staff.
Chris, yes.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So
Yeah, you've got to use your.
our plan wasn't fitting into the funding parameters?
Through you, Madam Chair, yes, that is correct, because they changed the parameters. So originally, when the funds were available, it was available to a municipality as well as an ISP, as well as an infrastructure company who, like, you're going to use Telcon as you see all the trucks around here. They're the ones that lay the fiber. So it didn't matter who the company was, as long as they provided the plan, whether that was a municipality in conjunction with another company or not. Now with the reverse auction, you have to be an internet service provider in order to get access to these funds, which we are not as a municipality.
Any other questions or comments on this? Obviously, we'll want to be kept abreast of developments, as it were. But until there's some clarity, it would seem difficult to even contemplate any kind of a contingency plan. I could ask, I think, if in the preliminary budget discussions, if there's been additional funds set aside for broadband for the next year.
There hasn't been at this point, because we don't know what might come up. But if there is something that comes up through our discussions that might bring it open as an opportunity, there's always the opportunity to go back to council and ask for funding allocation through a reserve fund, so that we're still able to pursue it.
That's helpful. Thank you very much. So seeing no other questions or comments, we'll move on to the next item of business, the 2022 economic development budget recommendations and priorities. I believe all members of the committee received a document that had.
I don't remember getting anything.
Okay, well,
no.
it's going to be
Nothing
emailed to
from
you
me.
momentarily. And I'm going to ask Kim Goodman to walk the committee through it.
I didn't receive one either.
You're going to receive it.
Yeah, my apologies. I'm just sharing it right now via email.
And then you're going to be sharing it on the screen, correct?
Or I can just share it on the
I
screen.
would
if
do
that's easier.
both.
Okay.
Sorry,
Yeah,
Madam Chair.
share it on the screen, please.
Okay. Just one moment here. I'm gonna give this to Terry, to Bo, Ray, Vicky.
I think members of the committee will probably find this document helpful. I do have a copy. I'd ask you to bear in mind that the format of this document is somewhat different, a little more user-friendly, I would say, a lot more user-friendly than the standard budget format that the township uses in its final budget. So those of you who are on Zoom, can you see the document on the screen? Okay.
We're good?
Yeah, we're good. So over to you, Kim Goodman.
Fantastic. Thank you, Madam Chair. So as our chair alluded to, this is obviously not the format that we submit our budget to our treasurer, but we did want to provide something that would facilitate some good conversation and dialogue. Where we started with this is a recommendation for $5,000 to $8,000 to support events that we would host in partnership with our two chambers of commerce. And I have had a meeting with each of the two chambers, and both are quite keen to host events with us. Gananoque Thousand Islands Chamber is interested in co-hosting an agricultural summit late in 2022. And the Lyndhurst Sealy's Bay Chamber is very interested in like a bit of a rural expo, and that would likely take place in June. You can see in the final column, we did try to loosely tag where those supports or where this aligns with our strategic priorities for economic development, including agriculture, obviously for an agricultural summit, and a business expo, which is kind of one of those things that's about supporting our core businesses and giving them an opportunity to showcase and do some additional networking. Every year, members of the municipality and EDC look at a number of memberships. That includes the St. Lawrence Corridor, Ontario East, Sports Tourism Alliance, EDAC, and EDCO. Aside from the corridor membership, the amounts are fairly small, generally in nature. We did include the demand study. There's been a lot of discussion about funding for the abattoir, so you'll see that included in there. The only caveat that the staff have is that perhaps we just double check. I mean, that's not a project that we would see kicking off necessarily in January. So to just make sure that's really the investment that we want to make. But in case there's some other emerging issue, and that's all we want to caution. When we had a brief budget meeting, we had a conversation about the style guide, the watermark or word mark and branding exercises that we wanted to do. And we're proposing that those will be done internally, because as you look to the next item, we are seeking general support from EDC. We will be going to council and recommending that we replace the staff person that was previously in the department. Again, it would be more of an entry-level position, very likely to help with business support, marketing, and communications, a function very similar to what Ms. Modler has been offering for us over the last few months. Part of the salary would be coded to community engagement as well, which would offset the communications function. So this is part of a salary. Inventories has been something that's been very much on our radar over the last couple of last months in particular. We've had lengthy discussions about sports tourism and our lack of preparedness. We talk about, again, the abattoir and understanding more about our agricultural community, the state of agriculture here. And when we look at tourism and tourism development, we need to better understand what assets that we have to leverage in terms of asset-based economic and community development. So we are proposing, which is half of the amount that we had proposed this year, to do the sports tourism strategy, but perhaps that will allow us to engage someone to kind of complete those. Again, line number 7, identified as tourism, is largely the visitor center. Actually, last year we issued for this calendar year, issued an RFP, which was awarded ultimately to the town of Gann for the visitor center. Based on proposals that we saw and where we see an opportunity, we have increased that amount by $8,000, which we hope, whether we do this through the tender process or it's through staffing, is to make sure that we have those visitor services in some sort of mobile format, so that what we're able to do is get out to every one of the communities. So when we know it's the ice cream social in Lyndhurst, that we can have a presence up there, and perhaps a busy weekend down in Rockport, that we would have that mobile person or trailer or whatever that's going to look like whether that's directed through our staff or, like I said, through a partnership with another organization, that would be beneficial. And then the only other two things that are on the list, if I can figure out how to get those to show up. There we go, are the matching funds for the two grants that we have. And one is the farmers market and the other is a new wayfinding sign program that we'll be rolling out. That is very generously also being funded through OMAFRA. So that is the very high level following a discussion that we had in late August.
Thank you very much, Kim. I'm opening it up for questions and comments. So just to be clear, this would be transmitted. The results of our discussion will be presumably possibly affecting the numbers and the priorities on this list. And then this eventual list would be sent to council as a recommendation from the Economic Development Committee for its consideration as it considers the budget as a whole. So we would be recommending to council. So I will open it up to questions and comments.
I have one.
Yes, Ray, go right ahead, please.
Which number is the style guide and logo? 4 or 5?
Four.
Number 4.
4. Okay. Now I think that's needs another look. In my view, the barn and the tree and the flag and the bridge have got to go. This is a amateurish job if ever I've seen one. It reflects poorly on us, and it's not that difficult a challenge to replace it. And it has to be done by a professional graphic designer. I don't think it has to be that expensive, but I think we're looking somewhere between 10 to 15,000 to get a job that we're not embarrassed about.
I agree, Ray. I've got some input.
Okay, Bo, yep, you have the floor, Bo.
It's just a few questions and or comments. One, are we clear on what the outcome of all of that activity will be relative to economic development? Like I see a lot of activity, but
I agree. Can I make another point?
Well, I'll let perhaps Kim respond to Bo's question first.
Certainly, Bo, I'm sorry, can you just repeat the question so I'm actually clear on the question and I'm giving you an adequate answer?
yeah, it's when I looked at the list, if I think about economic development, I'll give you the context of why I'm asking the question. When I think of economic development, I would think we would want to target activities that we believe will grow economic prosperity community. And I see stuff on there that's not clear that kind of the linkage that's going to drive from an economic growth standpoint. So I don't have it in front of me. If you sent it, I don't have it. I'm just trying to get a feel for like what drove these to be the right items to have on here.
Certainly, and through you, Madam Chair, we included items 3, which was the demand study for the abattoir, the style guide, item number 4, particularly from the business planner spreadsheet, right, in terms of actioning those items in particular response to that. The line item for the staff support is something that's kind of come up, and we see that aligning very much with the approved strategic plan in terms of that support the core and grow the core. A lot of the work that we've been doing on the ground really has been, COVID recovery based, which I know isn't necessarily bigger outward growth and development. But again, we know, and I'm trying to recall, I know Ann Weir had given us the statistics some time ago, but we do have a number of businesses that are sort of on the brink. And if we can give them any support in terms,
I guess what I'm beyond. Sorry,
go ahead.
I think that makes sense. Yeah, I think that makes sense. I just was trying to see where attraction was in here. So I see that the abattoir would be attracting something, but I was surprised like there's nothing for attracting housing, nothing for, at least that stands out for me on attracting hospitality growth, which was a focus area for us. So
Yeah, absolutely. So there's kind of two approaches on this one. Some of the housing and whatnot, the residential attraction and growth sort of thing, the affordable housing. We've had a couple of conversations at the staff level, and we think really one of the big low-hanging fruit items that we can do, which we didn't include as a budget item, is simple communications. And if we had a communications staff person in here that could better promote what we have and the processes and streamline processes, we think that that will have huge value. Some of the other business attraction sort of things we saw as part of the function of the corridor. So again, that might be contingent upon that.
yeah,
That some of that may stem from the conversation that we're having later today, and whether or not we drive it that way or we look at possible reallocations. I'm not sure, and I'm not trying to get ahead of that one in any way, shape, or form. Again, we're trying to keep a project scope and workload that's manageable for the couple of us that are here, but certainly open for conversation and discussion.
So just to clarify, in terms of the residential priority that's in the economic development strategy, not to jump ahead, but in the budget for planning and development, which is a different budget, which we don't have purview over. Am I correct in assuming that there are items in that budget as it is currently being developed that would speak to that priority from an economic development perspective?
Certainly through you. In terms of the 2022 budget for planning and development, there's a number of different things we're looking at in terms of trying to incent development. I will be looking in terms of bringing in a new building official in terms of trying to streamline the building permit process, more timely inspections, as well as better enforcement measures. Council has also given me the authority to go out and recruit for a planner on a one-year contract right now. So we're in the process of doing that, which will be included in next year's budget. Again, to get some more of our processes in order to streamline approvals and timelines and those types of things. So there's a number of things as it relates to housing and development that will be, as you've mentioned, captured within the planning and development budget that aren't specifically seen in the economic development budget.
Thank you. That's helpful.
Thank you.
I have Terry and
Thank you.
then Ray. Thanks, Bo. I have Terry and then Ray.
Okay,
Eric.
two things. I do want to agree with Ray's talking about the branding. I definitely think we need to modernize that, and it should be done by a professional. The second thing is the 8,000 that's going for the mobile economic development. If there's big events in Rockport or wherever, I'm confused as to how's that going to relate to economic development? Like, is there a plan, or is it just we're funding staff to go down to an event to talk about the township?
Kim.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Actually, the concept really, Terry, is very much like the services that the Visitors Center currently offers, where I know we've had, for example, I think it's Barry Homestead up in Lyndhurst, more than 50% of their business actually this year, something to that effect, came from the Visitors Center, pointing people out into our community. So what we really want to do is that the whole premise of that is that, and again, I'm basing this on some broad assumptions at this point, but I anticipate that we will be tendering that service again this year, our visitor services. And we open that up largely to DMOs, visitor centers, and some other community organizations that had expressed interest in that before. We did receive the bid proposal from the town of Gananoque. One of the things that they gave us a multi-tiered bid last year that included the ability to offer mobile visitor services. So it's not just to tout our own horn, but really the premise of having that mobile presence is that when guests land in the village of Rockport, for example, at the Customs House, that they're encouraged to go visit the Rockport barn or go down and try the Ivy Lee or take a helicopter ride or check out the Thousand Islands Tower. So it's about trying to encourage people to stay longer or at least come back and experience more of what Leeds in the Thousand Islands has to offer.
Madam Mayor, you have a question or a comment?
Just to add to, thank you, Madam Chair, just to add to Ms. Goodman's point. For example, Terry, when the first fishing tournament happened in Sealy's Bay, for example, in the summer, we'd had some challenges with a number of people descending on that community, maybe not being as organized and what have you. And I'll give you an example of what visitor services could have done rather than the local Residents Association. So Sabara took it upon themselves to go out and basically introduce themselves to the people coming for the fishing tournament. Thank you for coming to our community. Here's a brochure or a list of businesses. We hope that you take the time to grab some chocolates or go to Cones and Cravings or get your ice at the grocery store. All those sorts of things. We hope that you enjoy your time here at Sealy's Bay. And if you have any questions, our people are running around with the t-shirts. Ask us anything, we'll direct you in the right way. If we had a more organized visitor service, as Kim is alluding to, on the ground for these types of events where we know that there's a plethora of people coming in all at once, we can say, if you want to extend your time here, you can head to Wendy's Country Market or the Polar Bear Barbecue that's further out, or maybe to go to Wings Bait and Tackle in Lyndhurst, and then push them along, so to speak, along the way into the township. But right now, it was, in this particular instance, it was a local ratepayers association that was doing it, and kudos to them. They took great ownership of those things. And we actually are in the process of putting together a special events policy, which will also tie in, I'm hoping that with our economic development piece, that we can tie in those visitor services to ensure the maximum push out of those people into our community.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Chris Cunningham.
Thank you, Madam Chair. That sounds like a great idea. Do we have a handle on how many of these events the township are happening in the township on a year-to-year basis?
Kim.
This year alone, we have hosted under agreement 5 fishing tournaments. And we expect, as we develop the special events policy and we look to partner with more organizations such as those coming from outside our community to host events here, that number would easily double when we take into consideration events that are perhaps happening at the, we have fishing tournaments that launch from the outlet, from Furnace Falls, for example. So those 5 were just in Sealy's Bay, and I'm sure there's a myriad of events that are happening along the St. Lawrence as well. So this really is a great opportunity for us.
Just a little interjection. I talked to the proprietors of Twist Outlet last week. And some of you may know there were a couple of very large fishing tournaments at the outlet, very large.
Yeah.
They netted 2 ice cream cones out of the whole thing because people just came, dropped their boats, went fishing and left. And if they had driven by the Twist outlet, they may have noticed it, but if there'd been a little encouragement, who knows?
And that's, sorry to interject, but that's exactly why having people on the ground and suggesting that, and say, or even a coupon saying a 2-for-1, stop in, see us, or we'd love to see you, thanks for visiting. And it could also mean that they could get a gift bag that we've arranged from other local businesses with coupons. There's lots of different things we could do with that, with resources and with people.
Any other questions or comments? Yes, Ray.
Well, this budget is not exactly what I expected to see. To me, this is more of a continuation of last year's distribution, with the exception of the addition of the abattoir project on the logo. It's essentially a scattershot collection of events and continuing relationships and whatnot. What I expected was column A, the three key initiatives that the council approved. Column B, what activities are going to support those key initiatives, and column C, where the dollar signs are, how much we're going to spend on those activities. Because if you look at this budget as it is now, it bears no relation to the work we've done in the last 2 years, and that seems a little frustrating to me.
Well, I mean, I think that's a bit of an overstatement, but anyway, I'll invite any responses. In terms of what you would specifically like to see that is different in terms of expenditures.
I'd like to see some relation to the three core initiatives that we established. I'd like to see this expenditure here is part of this tactic, which is part of the housing initiative. I'd like to see money for a logo, which is tied to brand development, which is tied to hospitality. I'd like to see what was the other one?
Abattoir.
Right, agriculture. I'd like to see money for abattoir study tied to abattoir, tied to agriculture as a key. Otherwise, it seems aimless to me. We've already established direction, and we're not following the leader, or not following the leadership that the direction was supposed to provide.
So I'll invite other comments on Ray's point. Would members like to see a revised version of the budget? This is a draft.
Well, but before going that, excuse me, before we're going that far, am I alone here?
No, I agree with you. I don't know if we necessarily need to really revise the budget if the three pillars that we have, if they're included in the township budget. So we don't have anything for housing on the economic development budget. Obviously, that's in planning or wherever. Even if we have a sub-note of we have X number of dollars planned for housing. To acknowledge the three pillars, I agree with that. But my other question, I just want to follow up on the 8,000. Are we able to leverage the peer groups with this? Not just for them to volunteer, but to actually give them some money, give them some ability to work on these events, as opposed to tendering it out to some other organization.
Kim?
Certainly, and that is an excellent point, Terry. There is the only challenge being is that those four peer groups have significantly different capacity levels, but we could, we've partnered with Friends of Rockport Customs House very effectively. We've done volunteer training down there, and it's really just a matter of how it rolls out on the ground. Like I said, whether that's included in a tender and contracted out, whether we hire a staff or we offer support to existing organizations and agencies to act as our agent in that capacity. We'd certainly be prepared to examine all paths forward on that one.
But I'm assuming regardless of who the actual agent of implementation is, there would be some money that would have to change hands. Well,
Okay, so I want to go back to what Ray said, and I think it's an important point that he was raising. You could dismiss it as and when you think of it at the surface, how he said it, you may think he's talking formatting, but I think he's talking something much deeper. So as a team, we spent a lot of time developing an action plan. In fact, we engaged the court on key activities that we were going to go execute. And function follows form. So we need a constancy of focus here. If those are the three economic priorities that we have recommended, the council has recommended, has accepted, then any budget document should clearly tie back activity to the strategy, to the tactics, right? And it doesn't appear that way here, at least the way it's presented. Maybe the intention is that you can cherry pick it, But I think in my experience, without
Oh, you're frozen,
the
Ray.
follow through
We're
of strategy to tactics to funding, what?
Sorry, you just froze for a minute, Bo, sorry,
Oh.
but you're back on.
Okay, sorry. So I don't know if you heard. So I think in my experience in doing these kind of plans, you need strategy, tactics / actions, and funding to flow with that. But it has to be a continuous flow that's constant and consistent. And it's hard to tell that from this. So I think Ray was making a point more than just about format. He actually was making a point around how do you spend resources to drive the priorities, and how is that link happening?
Thank you. Kim?
And then that's something we can communicate to the community.
The question of how this document gets communicated to community would be, I mean, it's a public document in the sense that this is a public meeting, but it would be up to council how to communicate the budget to the community, I think. We can make recommendations, but that's beyond our purview. So,
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Kim, no, that's fine. Kim, I think, wants to respond before you continue.
No, can I just respond to that? Yeah, please.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So yes, the council communicates. My point is we have a strategy and action plan. We as a team should be able to tie these funds to that, at least for ourselves. And it's hard to tell right now. I'm not critiquing anybody. It's just very hard to flow though, that what we're saying we want to work on, we're actually working on. And so even for ourselves to better understand what we're doing would be helpful.
So I'm going to let Kim respond, and then I'm going to suggest a next step for us.
Certainly. Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you. And perhaps it was in part my delivery, but we did try to indicate to a certain degree where these aligned with our economic strategic priorities. Again, by hosting that small business expo, for example, giving our businesses another opportunity to showcase themselves and provide networking. The agricultural summit being something where we have the opportunity to network and build capacity with our on-the-ground food producers. In particular, and perhaps I misread the style guide versus corporate rebranding, because in my mind, those are two very significantly different things. The ability to come up with a word mark or a watermark that we could then put out of house to local restaurants or attractions so that they could include it to say, part of Leeds in the Thousand Islands or in Leeds in the Thousand Islands is very different than a new logo, font, color scheme, the whole 9 yards as part of like a corporate rebranding. So I took that as the former, not as the latter. I do believe as part of our corporate strategic plan, which will be coming forward in October, a rebranding is included as a strategic priority and would very likely be timed with the 25-year birthday or anniversary of the incorporation of our township for 2026. Certainly open for discussion on that one. The staff support, again, is the boots on the ground to help drive some of these things, because again, you know that this is really done in part off the corner of Marnie's desk, in part from my desk, and whatever grant supported staff that we have to help implement some of this work. Particularly the inventories we saw very directly tying back to tourism and sports tourism, particularly when we had direction from RTO 9 that talked about product development. It is incredibly challenging to develop and market products when you don't even understand what you have. So this was really a precursor to being able to collect that information so that we are prepared with staff support to then begin to develop those packages and promotional items and whatnot. Tourism, again, is at our core and offering those visitor services. And again, both of the OMAFRA funded projects, again, are in support of agriculture and tourism, wayfinding signs, which have been readily identified as a key method to help move people more fluidly through our communities. So perhaps it was in part in my delivery, and I do apologize for that. I can certainly provide more narrative. When this gets presented to council, it will have more of a narrative around it that will show how these items align with the corporate strategic economic development priorities.
So my understanding is that we still have some time to consider the draft budget. and the format that we wish to use when thinking about it. So I think there's been some really good suggestions about trying to make sure that we align the economic development strategy with the budget and show that alignment. So what I'm going to propose is that we do have a working group that could meet between now and our next meeting. And I think consistent with the fairly consistent direction that members of the committee have expressed around aligning the budget and thinking about the budget in terms of the economic development strategy, as well as the ongoing needs of the municipality that are related to economic development, that we should do that. So I'm going to propose that be our course of action coming out of this meeting, that between now and the October meeting, there be a working session to review this document in light of the format of the economic development strategy. Is that acceptable to members of the committee?
Yep.
Yes. I have a
Yes,
comment.
Greg, yeah.
Sorry, I wanted to go back to Kim. Kim, you're absolutely right. The style guide did morph into more of a township logo, but it to me, one is an extension of the other, and I may have inflated that by myself. But if it's very difficult to have a style guide if there's really no style.
Well put. Well put.
Madam Chair?
Yes,
Chair?
Chris.
So I'm shitty at math, but it's 125,000 is what we're spending on economic development. Is that somewhere like that?
Crib, yes.
Through you, and thank you, Madam Chair. There would be a few other items included that you're not seeing on here, for example, which would be our telephone costs, office supplies, software licensing fees, the balance of my salary and Marnie's salary, for example. So the budget will be more significant than this as a total. We thought that these are the things that we can actually contribute and discuss and move some dollars around, for example. The other ones are core discretionary, indiscretionary costs that we are unable to comment on or change.
And I mean, if you look at the township's budget format, it's very difficult to distinguish those core things from where there's discretion. So that's the whole purpose of this effort. So if people are in agreement with that, we will try and find a time when Kim and Marnie are available to work with the working group, and we'll bring something back to the October meeting. Great. So let's move on to the next item, which is the fall meeting schedule. And I hate to say it, but it's all about me. I am on a national committee that unfortunately meets from 3 to 4 the third Wednesday of every month from now until at least Christmas. And so there are a couple of options. One option is that I beg the township to use some space to do my Zoom from 3 to 4 here and then rush into the meeting, or 3:30 to 4:30, excuse me, here, and then rush into the meeting with Terry as vice chair of the committee chairing the first half hour of the meeting. The other option is to change the Wednesday of the meeting. And so I will obviously defer to the will of the committee, but if people are all right with moving the meetings from October to January inclusive to the fourth Wednesday of the month from 4 to 6, I would be able to attend. Terry.
That would be great
What
for
day is
me
that?
because I'm also running into a conflict on those third Wednesdays. So it would mean I would continuously have to Zoom probably from my vehicle.
What day is that?
For me, the third Wednesday is the issue.
So
But
both Terry and I, so it's not all about me. What a wonderful
No.
thing.
It's about both of us.
Yeah. So both the chair and the vice chair of the committee have a conflict on the third Wednesday of the month. Now,
Does this require a motion?
yes. it
I'll
would.
make the motion that the the meetings inclusive from October to January take place on the fourth Wednesday of the month?
From
Could
4 to
we make
6.
it all of the meetings?
Yeah,
Okay, well, we can make it all the meetings. That's fine.
sure.
I don't believe we have a problem with that. It would really be up to the clerk to, I don't think there's any conflicts, but we can confirm that. If the motion comes forward, the clerk can
Yes.
validate that.
Yeah. So we'll move forward with the motion if I have a seconder. Terry Childs seconds. Any discussion of the motion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? I believe it's unanimous. Thank you very much. And the clerk will confirm that that's the new meeting date for the EDC. Thank you very much. So we're now at the item related to the St. Lawrence Corridor Economic Development Committee membership renewal and agreement. I'm going to ask Bo, who has already agreed to recuse himself from the meeting at this point. We have still 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 members of the committee present. We have quorum, so we are able to proceed with this item, which is a great cause of joy in my life. So, Bo, thank you very much.
See ya.
See ya. Okay. As everyone on the committee knows, we have to make a recommendation to council about renewal of our membership in the St. Lawrence Corridor Economic Development Commission. We have spent a great deal of time over the past year on the township's membership in this body for a couple of reasons. One is it's a significant cost item in the economic development budget. The second is that I believe every member of the EDC found the existing relationship and agreement with the corridor wanting. And so without going into any repetitive detail, we had a lot of discussion with the commissioner of the corridor and the mayor and our representative on the corridor, Bo, led the charge, I would say, in terms of bringing about reform in the mandate and the governance of the corridor. So it is now time for us to consider whether or not the township should renew its membership in the corridor. I believe, I'm pretty certain that earlier this week, you all received 3 documents. The first is the original agreement under which the township joined the corridor that was dated 19th of June, 2017. So that was in the past life of the past council. The second document is titled Amending Agreement to the Agreement Respecting the St. Lawrence Corridor Economic Development Commission, which is a summary of those areas of the 2017 agreement that have been changed on a clause by clause basis. And the third document that you received is the November 2nd, 2020 report to Committee of the Whole from the Director of Planning and Development on membership in the corridor and the recommendations of the committee, of this committee, in terms of elements to be included in reform of the corridor going forward. And those are 5 in number, and they're on page 2 of that draft document. They are 1, the governance structure of the SLC EDC, 2, the cost of membership, 3, expansion of the mandate of the corridor, 4, performance metrics, and 5, notification period for exit. Okay. So at our last meeting, we set up a working group, as we were wont to do, to look at the revised agreement, because at our last meeting, if you recall, there was some desire for greater clarification about what council would be signing on to when it renewed or not its agreement to sign the corridor. That committee consisted of Chris Cunningham, Ray Belanger, Beau Passy, and myself. You should all know that Beau, as previously announced, is now the vice chair of the corridor. So that is the reason why he has recused himself from these deliberations. And he has recused himself from the deliberations of the working group as well. So the working group had 2 meetings supported by Marnie Vendetti. The first meeting was essentially due to availability, Chris, myself, and Marnie. And we went over the documents, but we also had the benefit of written comments from Ray on the document. And we considered those at our meeting. We concluded that there were some issues outstanding related to the revised agreement. And so out of a desire to learn more and also not to blindside our colleague on the EDC, we asked for and had a meeting with Beau late last week, simply to ask him questions about the context of the way the agreement has been revised, not to ask him to defend anything, but just to get clarity on the process and why there is not a fully revised agreement that has been presented to the township for consideration as it moves forward. And so Beau, to the best of his ability, responded. I will say, and I'll rely on Chris and Marnie, who are obviously there to augment my comments. I would say that the current format of the proposed changes, in other words, the document that is the amending agreement, was prepared at the request of the corridor membership. And I'm using my words and I'm trying to choose them carefully. Out of a desire to make changes expeditiously and not to spend a lot of time on governance and related matters that were outlined in the request from our township for changes. One item that we had included, that the idea that the corridor consider expanding its membership, was not something that the corridor membership wanted to consider at this time. But my takeaway from our discussion with Beau, and I would certainly again rely and defer to Chris and Marnie on this, is that the those who are involved in revising the document think that they have met all of the township's concerns going forward. So that's the current state of play. And so I'm going to open the discussion to everyone for comments on these documents, and for comments on whether or not the township should or should not renew its membership in the corridor. The 2 items in my mind are somewhat related. So I come from a background that is sort of about dotting the I's and crossing the T's. I have a personal bias to action, but I also like to see the I's dotted and the T's crossed. So the state of the documentation around the revision is one issue in my mind. It can be conflated with or made separate from the question of whether or not we recommend that the township continue its membership. So with that rather verbose introduction. I'm going to open the floor for questions and comments. Ray,
I have just a quick question. That first document you have, the original from June 14th,
yeah, 2017, yep.
how many pages long is that?
17.
Right. So there's the first 4 or 5 pages are legalese clauses. Then there is a signature page. And then there are 3 appendices that follow that, A, B, and C.
Yep.
I'm assuming that those appendices are part of the contract.
I would assume so too.
Okay, so unfortunately, I wasn't able to go to the last working group meeting, but those appendices, especially Appendix C, is riddled with all kinds of inconsistencies, overlaps, gaps, and it refers to the commission as a corporation. It refers to a commissioner. It refers to a CEO. There's all kinds of strange business in there.
So for people who have the document in front of them, perhaps, that's on page 12. Appendix C begins on page 12.
So did we get a chance?
I think, Ray, you have done a thorough reading, and so we'll take your word. We'll take your word. Go ahead, Ray, if you want to carry on.
Appendix A and B are fairly boilerplate-ish and not to have any kind of binding problems with them, but it's particularly Appendix C. I came up with a handful of issues that just seem to be someone talking off the top of their head. Who's the CEO?
Charlie Manjo.
He's
And who's
not a
the
CA.
He's the commissioner.
He's the commissioner. He's not the CA. Well,
All
I
right.
guess, sorry, are you saying CAO or CEO?
CEO.
CEO would be the chair of the board, not the, or I guess, sorry, it's just, I'm thinking of it in municipal terms.
So not to correct you, Madam Mayor, but to read from the document. On page 12, definitions, Chief Executive Officer, CEO, for the purpose of this draft agreement, the yet to be formed organization will be run by a commissioner who will be appointed as the CEO, reporting to a board of directors.
My apologies.
This individual will not be a member of the board.
And here we have reference to a draft agreement and it has signatures on it.
I have not signed it.
Yes, I should have added this, that Bo indicated to us that all of the mayors, except our mayor, had signed off on this. Well, I thought, good on our mayor, but.
Absolutely. That's the way we do business.
I know my lane.
Marnie needs, go ahead. I think I'm going to let Marnie add and then back to you, Ray. Yeah.
Thank you. Through you, just for clarification, because I had the question asked of me, why is our mayor not able to sign the agreement? And because all of the other mayors had. And when I looked into it or asked the question of the commissioner, the response I received was that because it was just an amending agreement to the original agreement and the changes were not substantive in terms of changing the structure of the original agreement, that all of the other mayors didn't need to go back to their councils for authority to execute an agreement with respect to the changes that were made.
Thank you. Ray, back to you. And then.
Well, I don't know. We have a couple options. We can hammer and tong our way through Appendix C, or we can remove the appendices. I don't know if that's possible since everyone else has signed it. Excuse me, just to finish, the amendments that they proposed to have quibbles, but no serious problems with. It's the cloudiness that follows. I mean, if you're going to refer to this as a corporation, well, now we've got shareholders and we have directors, and are the directors liable? And you get into a whole kind of muddy mess there by just inattention. You know? But I don't know how diligent do we want to be?
Madam Mayor and then Chris.
So I don't want to oversimplify this discussion, but like you said, Ray, rather than quibbling over the small details one way or the other, because I could say that there are substantive changes, and that's why part of the reason I don't want to sign it, because when you talk about changing the 1 year notice period to 6 months is a substantial period or substantial change in my mind, but also the fact that to me, it's the glaring issue of accountability that is lacking in the agreement. So while the committee may have put in place accountability terms for the commissioner, it's not clearly laid out in the overall agreement. And part of the challenge with this group, they have struggled with governance throughout the term of the existence of the group. So I know that for a fact, the push from this economic development committee and specifically Bo has created more clarity. So I don't want to undermine the work that's been done, because there's been substantial work done compared to where we were and where we are now. It's substantial. Having said that, I don't know if it's complete, but I do know that the corridor has created will shortly, I believe, come forward with some really great news for the area. I do believe in a regional approach. However, without the measuring stick that we were asking for as far as the accountability piece, this is really a question of whether we support the overall project from a political standpoint or not. We have little to justify our investment other than we made a bunch of calls. We have reports from the commissioner showing his activity. So I don't want to undermine that activity. But when you're talking about taxpayer dollars and we're handing that over with no sort of expectation of results, and I realize that economic development is one of those things that's very difficult to build a fence around and identify certain lanes, because there's always lots of action, but results can take years, they can take months, they can take decades. So really what I'm looking for from this committee to come forward to council is whether or not their involvement in the regional development is enough for us to continue our contribution because of our lack of industrial, because their focus is industrial, not tourism. And I know one of the things that this group had asked was their involvement in tourism, and they have no interest in that. And to be honest, we get support from the county on that level, but that's a whole other discussion, which we won't go down that road. So what I'm looking for from the committee is basically whether or not you think it makes sense for us to stay in another year. Otherwise, I will need to give our notice, and that will be up to council to make that decision. But I would look for a recommendation from this committee as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Marnie and then Chris.
Thank you. Just for clarification, we did provide notice last November of terminating our membership within the 1 year exit period, and that within that time, that the mayor and business industrial representative on the board continue to work with the corridor board within the 1 year period to update the existing membership agreement to include details, including the governance structure, cost of membership, expansion of the mandate, performance metrics, and notification of period for exit. So from a procedural perspective, we gave that notice last November 9th. So this goes back into our budget discussions and further discussions.
Sorry, I misspoke. So what I'm looking for from the committee is whether or not we should enter back into and continue on for another year. That's what I'm looking for input from this committee to come to council for us to make our decision at council.
Thank you for the clarification, Chris.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's a terrible look for our township to be seen to be giving up interest in economic development. And there has been substantive work done by this committee, and I think that has kind of kicked the ass of the commission to a certain extent. But that amount of work is simply not articulated in this agreement. And we very specifically asked Charlie, I think he came in 3 times, and we specifically asked him, these are the things that we are interested in seeing in this agreement. And he would nod his head and say, okay, I'll take care of that. And what we get back is just the deck chairs have been rearranged. So I certainly can't, I'm certainly for terminating the agreement. We also have time here as well. I mean, he easily can come back and include in the contract things that we've been told he considers are operational. They have to be articulated.
Again, just to clarify, we had a considerable discussion to clarify with Bo the absence of metrics in the revised agreement. And again, I'll be corrected if I misspeak, but the response was that these things are considered operational, they're sort of underway, and we and the commission members, the mayor and each representative, will find out about them when they are presented to them. Was the response that I believe we got. Correct me if I'm wrong.
It's kind of ass backwards, isn't it?
Well, I come from the wrong background.
No, here,
Forgive me. Yes, Ray.
here's a question for each board member to consider. On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you consider how congruent are our 3 pillars with the activities of the commission? Are 3 pillars perfectly reflected and pursued by the commission? That would be a 10. If they're not, it's a 1. And you can come up with your own number, and that might help you decide whether to continue.
Terry Childs, please.
Are you asking for that right now?
No, I'm not
Okay.
asking for. Well, if you want to give the number out loud, go ahead. But
Personally, and that's what I like about regional economic development, I would say our pillar on housing falls in perfectly with the commission. And I'm not expecting tourism or agriculture ever to fit in with that, but those would be benefits that we would gain out of the potential for housing, whether it be subdivisions, whether it be executive homes, from the development of the commission's what they're bringing in or what they're trying to bring in.
So the new clause 2 of the revision document says that the new clause 2 of the eventual agreement shall read, the purpose of the SLC EDC shall be to achieve a net growth of employment and assessment based focused on industrial, commercial, agribusiness, and land development sectors within the geographic boundaries of the partner municipalities. And then there are 2 other elements to this. So that sort of amplifies your question, Ray. Right? That's what they're saying they're going to do.
well, I suppose
Yes, Ray.
I suppose we could outsource the agriculture and housing dossiers to the commission and focus on tourism ourselves.
The commission has not adopted any element of tourism or hospitality in its revised mandate. Chris, did you have a comment? I thought I saw your hand. Marnie.
Thank you. There was one clause that was added into section 2 as well that did cause me a little bit of concern. It's subsection C, which states other priorities for economic development deemed appropriate by the partner municipalities. But there was no elaboration in terms of what that means. So I guess the concern that raises for me is the corridor going to consider any economic development priority by any municipality? Like, how does that come into effect? What's the cause for consideration? What are they open to and how would resources be allocated to something like that? Because that's a pretty wide open clause, but it doesn't really provide any structure for that type of consideration.
Thank you. Further comments and questions? So I'm going to suggest that the general consensus of the committee has been and continues to be that we favor a regional approach to economic development. The committee has mixed views about the approach that has been taken to revising the agreement with the St. Lawrence Corridor Economic Development Commission, and has questions about some elements of the revised terms of the agreement. And the committee finds it difficult to really pass judgment on the solidness of the agreement as a legal agreement that binds not only the township, but all of the other municipalities that are members, when we actually have not seen a revised agreement. So we have an option to recommend to the township that it agree to continue its membership in the corridor, subject to receiving a fully revised, legally vetted agreement.
Is that a motion, Madam
No, I
Chair?
can't make motions.
Well, I will make that motion as noted by our recording secretary.
Any comments or thoughts about that idea that I had? So Chris has made a motion. Would there be a seconder for that motion? Ray seconded the motion. Is there any discussion of the motion? Seeing none, all in favor? I believe it's unanimous. Okay. Yes, Barney.
Sorry, for clarification, so that we can make sure we get the motion right, because we have to type it up and print it
Yeah,
off
yeah.
to be signed. And so I've got, the motion that we asked for is, just so I've got it, because I've got a draft in front of me. Whereas the Economic Development Committee is supportive of a regional approach to economic development. Are we just asking for a fully revised?
We are recommending to council that it continue its membership in the St. Lawrence Corridor Economic Development Commission, subject to receiving a fully revised and legally vetted agreement in advance of the deadline.
Can you say that slower?
Required that they are supporting the regional approach
Yeah.
based on a fully revised agreement and legally vetted, fully revised and legally vetted agreement. Sorry.
Fully revised, okay.
Yeah.
Fully, we want to see what this beast is going to look like, and we want a lawyer to look at it to point out the fact.
Well, we have one as a CAO here, so we can have that take him, we pay good money for that guy.
Whereas the Economic Development Committee is supportive of a regional approach to economic development, the EDC recommends to council that membership
Continue.
can be continued based on receipt,
Subject to.
Subject
receipt.
to.
subject to.
A fully revised and legally vetted agreement.
And we don't have to get into the specifics of what,
Nope.
no.
Nope. You made your recommendations to them and to us, and I think that's fairly clear. It's up to me to go back to the committee and say, there's a couple of holes here.
Yeah, well, I mean, we're still in official session. but I would say, these are very well-meaning people who really want the best for this region. There's no question about it. But in their desire to get things done, they seem to have forgotten that they're spending public money. And you can only look to, I don't know, well, you can't look to the Gananoque Reporter anymore, but you can only look to, let's say, the CBC. And, if this kind of thing were exposed in terms of the way the committee is working and the way it is dealing with its mandate, there could be some challenges.
Yeah.
And just to add, Madam Chair, I really do not want to underestimate the involvement of this committee, as well as Bo Passy.
Yeah.
Bo has made an unbelievable impact on that committee. He has really pushed the committee to do more and faster. And I know that Bo does get frustrated with the process from municipal government side of things. And my running joke has always been, from my very early days of learning at Queen's Park when I was 23, if you think government works slow from the outside, try working inside, because that's even more so challenging to get the changes made that people want to make it look nice and pretty on the outside. But you hit the nail on the head. This is public money. And while well-intentioned public money to be spent, there needs to be some sort of accountability to show that there's value in that, and that working together is actually bringing us together. It's coming together more so. And again, I do believe we're making progress, but it doesn't mean that we should take our foot off the gas to continue to push to create that collective cohesiveness. So thank you for the effort in that regard.
Well, I think, we'll look forward to continuing to work with the commission. And I certainly do also want to acknowledge Bo's huge
Yeah.
contribution. Yes, it is. But I do want to acknowledge that. But I think this is a good outcome and sort of threaded the needle a little bit. So anyway, let's move on to other items, information items. First of all, staff update.
Certainly. Thank you, Madam Chair. I can jump off and then Marnie can piggyback if she's got anything that she wants to add. I know it's less directly related to economic development, but our recreation assistant recently moved on. So we are recruiting for a new recreation assistant, which does offer support within my department. Additionally, we were recruiting for a planner today as well. So Marnie and I spent the day doing interviews. So fingers crossed, folks, that we will have a couple of great new staffers on board here over the coming weeks and months. As alluded to when we discussed the budget, I did have actual conversations with both of our local chambers of commerce. In fact, I spent a great deal of time with the Lyndhurst-Sealy's Bay Chamber of Commerce and discussed with them, priorities and projects and whatnot for 2022. I do think they recognize that they have some work to do in terms of their capacity building, and that was one of the things that we have agreed to work on for next year. So I think when we talk about our economic development budget, those are some of the small things that perhaps I will include in a bit more of a write-up, so that we see that by building capacity and supporting our chambers, that they then in turn are supporting our local businesses, which then links back to one of our strategic priorities. Let me see. We have also had a change in staff with our farmers market coordinator. She tendered her resignation. I'm not sure if I brought that up at the last EDC meeting. So I need to reach out to OMAFRA and speak with our program coordinator there. Unfortunately, I was quite disappointed with how the project was not delivered well this summer. And so we will be looking to pull up our bootstraps a little bit and knock it out of the park next year. So I'm quite excited about what is to come. A couple of other key, more corporate-wide things is that our senior management team met with the consulting team from LMP, who was recently retained through council to facilitate an organizational efficiency review. So we recognize that some of us, Amanda, I'm looking at you, have been kicking around for 10 some odd years, which for our organization makes us some of the more senior staff here. The thing is that we've come in and we were trained one way, and you sometimes just get caught up in doing business the same way, or we get familiar with a particular piece of software and you continue to use it. And it's only sometimes after somebody brings in a new piece of software, or you've struggled to work with that original one, that you realize that there's probably a lot of efficiencies that can be found even just in software solutions. So that project is expected to occur over the next few months, with recommendations coming forward in terms of efficiency, modernization. The goal is not to reduce staff, but really to allow us to cut costs and find new sources of revenue, as well as, Marnie's alluded to, the permitting process, for example. Is there a better way that we can be doing business at any one of our desks? The strategic plan will be coming forward at the October meeting of council, assuming we get that report back in good time. And I don't know that I actually circulated it out to the group, but economic development remains one of the 4 pillars and priorities for strategic development and investment over the next 5 to 10 year horizon. It directly includes accelerated investment in broadband, whatever that looks like, but we do recognize that that is a significant need in terms of a healthy economy in our community. It includes investment in tourism and sports tourism, and it includes supports for our existing businesses. So support and sustain our core business retention and expansion sort of stuffs.
Before you carry on, I think we have just lost Ray.
Oh, he had his hand up, but.
Oh, no.
Maybe his coming back on, but do we have any other motions? Because if not, other than,
This is just information.
so.
15 minutes. Okay, I'll go really fast then so everyone else has a term. Effective today, mandatory vaccination certifications are required to enter into any one of our multi-use recreational facilities. So that doesn't include our office, for example, but each of our 2 community halls or any other shared facilities. Participants will be required to show proof of vaccination. We will need to see ID to prove that the proof of the certification for vaccination is in fact yours. There's going to be a few hiccups, I think, over the coming weeks as this falls into place, and it will change again, obviously, in middle of October when the new QR code scanners take effect. So bear with us. This is legislation that is coming down from upper levels of government, and we are doing our best to implement it in a way that ensures that we are adhering to those legislative requirements, but still make it work for our community. The last one that I wanted to put on your radar is that I am also in the process of developing a vaccination policy for staff. We anticipate at this point, vaccinations will be strongly encouraged, not necessarily mandated, but that is subject to council's discretion. When that policy takes effect, it will also, of course, impact council and committees of council and our volunteers as well. So I will be sure to share that with you when it goes to council with notification of whether or not it passes. And that's what I've got for today.
Thank you very much. Marnie, anything to add?
Just quickly, an update. We, so far to date this year, have issued 205 building permits, which is well in excess of what we were at this time last year. With respect to planning applications, just an indication of development that's occurring. We have exceeded with our year-to-date totals, our application numbers for most of our application types for the last 2 years. So it's not just a COVID blip necessarily. We're ahead of where we were at in 2019 as well. So in terms of development and building and construction, we're doing quite well. There's a rapid pace happening in the township.
Thank you. Questions for either Kim or Marnie? Chris?
Yeah, Kim, would you just go over that township vaccination policy again, please? I just want to make sure that I'm.
Absolutely. Thank you, Chris. And through you, Madam Chair. Ontario has provided direction to all corporations and businesses, et cetera, that they have to have a vaccination policy in place. It doesn't say what the vaccination policy needs to include. So we've been looking at ones from many, many, many municipalities. Some municipalities are mandating that all staff must have double vaccination to attend their place of work. What some of the ramifications of that are, remain to be seen. We've had a conversation with our senior management team, and at this point, we believe we will be moving forward with the recommendation, and it will come to council for approval, that vaccinations are strongly recommended and encouraged. For those who have not got both their vaccinations, we will be providing education and time off of work so that they can go and obtain their vaccination.
Is there any requirement for testing?
Not at this point. However, we may ask for staff who are here on a regular basis, if they're not double vaccinated, we may ask for rapid tests from time to time, and would of course enforce other COVID safety measures such as physical distancing, which is what we're doing now, mask wearing, and of course contact tracing will remain in place. We're very fortunate across the county right now. We are almost hit our 90% for first dose vaccination rate. So we're in a very largely protected area here. But again, I know it's a bit of a moving target yet.
Any other questions? Council update, Madam Mayor, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll try to be brief. So I'd like to acknowledge that we have hired a full-time fire chief, Mike. Oh my gosh, Pryor. I had a total other Mike's last name on the tip of my tongue, and I don't know why. Mike Pryor is our new fire chief. He was our deputy fire chief and now has moved up into the fire chief position. Just acknowledgement that there's been a huge amount of growth in our volunteer firefighters. And while that doesn't necessarily speak to economic development, what it does is protect our businesses, our people, our visitors, whether they, God forbid, be in a car accident or in need of a medical assist, or if there is ever a fire in our area. So we thank all of those people who have stepped up, who are taking the training, who are being committed to the work of being a volunteer firefighter in this municipality. And I think that it speaks to the leadership of Mr. Pryor and how that will move forward. A couple of things about speed zones. The county has finally finalized, I will anticipate they'll be finalized tomorrow at the county meeting, a reduction in a speed zone on County Road 3, Reynolds Road, Outlet Road, whatever you want to call it, Prince Street, coming into the village of Lansdowne. So basically from the stop sign at Rapid Valley into the village of Lansdowne will be going down, I believe, to 60. I think it's 60, not 50, because it goes down to 50, I think, when it comes into the village. So that will be a change in habit for a number of us. And I'm hopeful that I remember because, I'm usually in a hurry to get wherever I'm going. So I will have to pay attention more closely as I come into the village, just like everybody else. Also, they changed the speed zone. It was reduced in front of Sweets Corner School, which was to adhere to a school safety zone, which was welcomed by many parents and children's families who go there. But there were some challenges or concerns and complaints made by people coming through there on nights and weekends when children are no longer around, because it's such a rural school. It's not like people or kids are coming to use the playground and they're walking to and from. So there is going to be timed signage and timed speed zone reduction based on the submission to council that I anticipate will be ratified tomorrow. Just to underscore, as we go into the budgeting process, the asset management plan part of how we're dealing with things going forward here in the municipality. There will be a document coming forward based on my conversation with our treasurer, identifying what our infrastructure deficit is in this municipality. I anticipate that it won't be, it's going to be scary to some degree because it will really clarify where we need to be from a taxation point of view and project point of view and a planning point of view. That's what asset management planning is supposed to be, but it's ever changing and ever evolving based on the information that is submitted. And I just want to thank the work done by the senior management team and specifically the treasurer and largely the director of operations who sort of quarterbacked this together. And the nice thing is that going forward in future councils, regardless of who sits in the chairs, should be very clear about how they allocate money to ensure that there's funds in place to maintain our roads, buildings, and all of our other infrastructure. The other thing I want to underscore is the bottleneck that MPAC has created along with the province. So part of the challenge as a municipal government, we've taken some heat from businesses who are upset that we continue to levy commercial taxes on some of the businesses who have suffered. And I don't want to sound insensitive to that because I'm certainly not. The challenge being is that under the Municipal Act, we are not in any way, shape, or form allowed to reduce taxes for one group over another for any particular reason. But the other thing one must keep in the back of their mind, MPAC usually has a phase-in assessment to increase the levy on an annual basis. We've gone 2 years without a phase-in assessment. So the only growth in taxation has been based on new builds and building permits to a certain degree. And I'll be honest, I don't know how backed up MPAC is on putting those through the system. That's a detail I would have to look into specifically. So we are not anticipating a phase-in for MPAC for another year until after the provincial election. So having said that, I don't imagine they're going to come in with a big axe and say, here you go, we're doubling your property values. That's not going to happen. And I don't want taxpayers to think that that's going to happen. Having said that, people need to keep in mind that the cost of goods and the cost of labor and the inflation rate has gone up considerably. We have tried to even out our taxation rate over the last 2 years. I know it hasn't been a popular decision, but in light of the fact that we had not increased taxes to meet inflation for almost 10 years, it put us in a very difficult position. So there will be no phase-in. I'm hopeful that our growth through our building permits and the work that the planning department has been doing will translate into enough levy that we can minimize hopefully negate any need for a tax increase coming up, but it will depend on what our asset management plan comes forward with and what we're going to need. Lastly, September 30th, as of today, it has been decided that September 30th will be a holiday for the municipality. The municipality will be closed based on direction from or input from a number of other municipalities. We were honestly on the fence about the Day of Truth and Reconciliation, about whether we would be closed as a whole or not. There was some negotiations that came forward that pushed our hand, if you will, that we needed to make a decision one way or the other. So the CAO has informed me that the decision has been made that we will be closed on September the 30th. Okay.
Very, very good.
Okay. And that's all I have for my notes. Thank you.
Good.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Any questions of the mayor? Okay. Is there any other business? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
We don't have quorum.
We don't need,
Oh, wonderful. There you
so I
go.
guess we were within 15. So
We're-
so may I have a
Resolution?
Well, we have one.
Oh,
Right? Oh, that's the other one. Yes. Yes, may I have a resolution? Can I have a mover to adjourn?
Chris will do that.
Yeah, and Terry's going to second. All in favor? Okay, we are adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Hi, everyone.
Terry Charles.
Hi, everyone.
Bye-bye.
You have to. You moved everything, so, okay, there we go.
Move by.
Brian, we have a couple minutes, I can go over a couple of those things that I can do so that you can go home. No rush. No rush. No,